So thanks everyone, thank you, and join the circle. What I'd like to propose for starters is that we go around the room and we just, each of us talk briefly for maybe a minute or two, maybe maximum couple minutes, about what projects or programs or transformational initiatives are we participating in ourselves personally. And I'll start with myself just to kind of, set the example, and then Michael, and then just like in maximum 2 minutes. So my name's Jamen Shively. In addition to being program chair for the Sierra Club dinners, which I do on a volunteer basis, I'm also the president and co-founder of radish.org, which I collaborate on with Michael and a number of other colleagues. Tony, who's here with us today, and my partner Melissa and Adam and Andre and a bunch of other folks, building a platform and putting it into practice for collective intelligence. This is a manifestation of collective intelligence, what we're doing right here, and thank you all for being here. I'm also working on lobbying the Catholic Church to get Pope Francis to step into a major leadership role. He took a major leadership role in writing his most recent encyclical, published in 2015, Laudato Si, on care for our common home. Really amazing, radical, revolutionary book. Radical, I'm talking about to the roots of capitalism and the consumer culture and everything else. He would love Arcologies, and probably does, because he's been down in the weeds. So doing a major effort there, and working with my partner, my girlfriend Melissa, on saving the orcas in the Pacific Northwest region on a very local level, and working on a project to end world hunger and to transform the economy to a compassionate economy, and to get connected with all of you, collective intelligence. So that's my example of a concise, what am I working on? And we'll just go around the circle. And it's totally optional to speak, by the way. You can take a pass if you don't want to speak. So carry on.
Well, I've already shared. I mean, I could just, again, mention Synergetic Press. I'm excited about the stuff that we're doing.
Maybe speak up a little bit.
The Synergetic Press and the group that did the Biosphere 2 project, I think there's some great resources there. And I'm also working on a project to network the festival culture and intentional community movement and permaculture movements and other associated communities of practice in a private collaboration network called the Communitas Zone. So we're in the early stages of developing this to create more synergies and interactions between, focused on these parallel cultures that have been evolving over many years, the intentional community movement and the conscious festival culture. So that's kind of where my current activity lies.
So about 18 months ago, I went to the, my name is Josh Wolf. About 18 months ago, I went to the Oregon Eclipse Festival, where I went to a panel discussion on using festival values to build intentional community that Michael gave, and asked the question, very similar to the question I asked tonight, what's happening? How are we going to actually make this happen? And since then, I've been working to build a project called Symbio City that is an effort to move forward in creating a 5,000 person plus regenerative city where we grow the majority of the food we consume and really take the eco-village to that level that we were talking about today. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff to do about that, so I'm looking at anyone else doing similar things, including the smaller scale to learn how to do the bigger scale, the transition network, and just anything I can learn about how we can actually build these communities, because having lived in San Francisco for about 15 years, 90% of all my artists and freaks and weirdo friends are all gone because they can't afford to live there. And instead of all of us going to the same new city, which would be beautiful and awesome and amazing and great, everyone's been spread out across everywhere. There's an archipelago of sanity across the country, and if we can actually come together and build something at the 1,000 person scale, I think we can do some really, really powerful shit. So that's what I'm here for.
Amen. Hallelujah. Woo! Thank you, John.
Symbio, what's your website again?
Symbio, SYMBIO.city. So it's a kind of combination of symbiosis and city. It also creates a new word, symbiosity, in case anyone's looking to conjugate new words.
Beautiful.
So how can we help you? What do you need?
I mean, the zoning is the biggest hurdle, so the more people we can get together to try to figure out where we can actually build this, if anyone has contacts with local governments to make that zoning happen, if you don't have those contacts and you try calling local governments to figure out which one will work with you, you quickly learn that there's it's always a conditional use, and they're happy to talk to you once you buy the land. But you can't buy 25,000 acres and then have the conversation about whether or not it's possible to do what you want, because 25,000 acres isn't like a spur of the moment kind of buy for anyone who's not Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, neither one of which are in my phone yet. So if you have their phone numbers, that'll work too.
Okay.
My name is Mark Caskey, and I'm a colleague of Michael's. We started the Green Century several years ago that he mentioned. And I want to add one thought to this discussion, which is in looking for how do we make it happen, where do we make it happen. There's a resource that most people don't think of, which is former military bases that have been closed. These are, in many cases, outstanding facilities for housing and offices and recreational facilities and meeting facilities and great locations often. And gradually, over a period of years, they're being closed with the Base Realignment and Closure Commission. I was director of Fort Mason Center for 20 years from the beginning, and that's been a successful conversion to a cultural center. And when I left there, I'm still involved with them now for 40 years. When I left there, I went down to San Diego. I commuted to San Diego for 8 years to help them close the Naval Training Center. The Naval Training Center now, if you look it up under Liberty Station, it's got housing, offices, retail, recreational, major cultural facilities, 26 buildings, 25 acres of cultural facilities. It's hotels, restaurants, and people. It's used by people who live there, the facilities who work there, and because of the nature of the development, people visit as well. And so, just one model or one possible resource to look at is military bases, and there's a schedule for them being closed. And I guess one last comment I'll make about it is I had an idea a few years ago, which I'm not the best person to pursue in terms of administration, execution I'd be interested in, which is contact the Defense Department. They can be heroes in the sustainable redevelopment of communities all over the country. They own these facilities.
They're going to be dispensing their cities, counties, states, cities, counties, states, and they could actually set criteria. With redevelopment of the military bases that would have all sustainable. Principles. Only dispense them free to execute things. Defense that would make no cost heroes of sustainable.
Heroes at defending Mother Earth. A new whole new meaning for defense. Yeah.
These buildings still serve national purpose is no longer needed. There's another national purpose that they can now fit.
Those two projects, Fort Mason and the Liberty Station, are inspirational. Fort Mason in particular is just the envy of cities all possible visited. I noticed Mark was recently given the award, recognition for the recognition he did for Fort Mason. But there's constantly cities coming to visit and regenerative projects, things like that.
And I live in the Presidio, which even has a greater version of that. If we had that in mind. So I'm trying to work with them to shift their thinking just a little bit, not convert them 180 degrees, but shift their thinking to incorporate these values in their development.
How beautiful is that? That Josh asks the question, how do we make this happen? And sitting right to his right is to his left and right are pioneers who have made this happen. So that's what I'm talking about. This is magic, what's happening right here.
So my name's Tony. Jamen mentioned I work or have Radish, which is collective intelligence.
Yeah, speak up.
Sorry. So my name's Tony. I'm currently interning for a project that Jamen and Michael are part of called Radish, which is about promoting collective intelligence. My immediate interest is in psychedelic therapy, and I'm doing an integral counseling psychology program at CIIS. So in a very roundabout way, my interest in being here is to evolve human consciousness and be part of all the new social systems that manifest from that. That's it in a nutshell.
Awesome.
Hey guys, my name is Sai. In many ways, the work I do is the exact opposite of everyone so far that's been mentioned, which is all in-person stuff. For me, I have a platform called Crowdcast, which is a live streaming platform that allows people to gather just like we're gathering, but virtually at scale. Just today we held it at 17,000 people. But yeah, it's like an organizing tool. Those who share their ideas, so fun. That's
Awesome.
It is awesome to broadcast.
we should
Is it just
talk about
Crowdcast?
the next conversation.
There's going on that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's connect on that.
Hello, my name is Khadija, and I'm one of the folks that live at Place, one of the places that John has founded in Oakland. And I am an urban farmer and garden educator, and yeah, generally very interested in eco-villages and all of this, which is why I'm here and why I live in Place. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ute. I was at the Cell Space Community Art Center in the Mission District of San Francisco for 8 years. It wound up being there for 17 years. It was a shared art facility, a makerspace before the term makerspace was born. Then took a traveling eco-caravan across the United States for 8 years, known as the Sustainable Living Roadshow, trying to bring some of the ethos of the Bay Area and the West Coast in general and spread it all around the country. And then we settled down here in the northwest corner of Oakland with the Place for Sustainable Living. And the Place for Sustainable Living is an art and ecology community center dedicated to permaculture, regenerative design, resilience, preparedness, creating a hub and to decentralize sort of like the awareness and the technology and to demystify them in sort of like one spot, so that all of these green technologies exist in one location, from passive solar design, rainwater collection, gray water systems. We're doing a radiant heat floor soon, on down the line with classes and workshops to then teach people how to integrate that into their own lives. That being said, we do a lot of initiatives locally, work with community members, have a hyper-local sort of approach. Placemaking is a big part of what we do. We obviously learned a lot from City Repair up in Portland to engage people and bring them out of their homes into the public commons. And to that effect, I think that every neighborhood should have a little place for sustainable living. And instead of trying to rent space for $5,000 a month, which is what we pay, I feel like there's a huge opportunity in connecting with the Rec and Park department and using Rec and Park sites as a green living centers that can be done in a series of weekends, green makeover, using local sort of permaculturalists and urban ag folk, but also connect with the CERTs and the NERTs. That's emergency response, sort of teams that are based locally, as well as the plumbers union doing gray water and rainwater, and the carpenters union learning how natural building, and the electricians union doing solar and wind generation. So get everyone on board and have these centers be hubs for green living, so that you can actually then convert your neighborhood. And the whole idea of having a resilient neighborhood is the ability to bounce back from an adverse situation. Disaster could hit at any moment right here because we're on fault lines. So if we have these, sort of this awareness with everyone has water that they're collecting and everyone has gardens that they're growing food in, we don't have 72 hours worth of backup supplies. We have months of backup supplies because we're growing our own food. We've collected hundreds of gallons of water off of our roofs, and that is just part of our new culture. And so that's something that we're really pushing ahead at, and we're open to connecting and partnering. And I did also want to reference Christiania is a group of hippies in Denmark, in Copenhagen, took over their version of the Presidio and turned it into the sovereign nation neighborhood of Christiania, or Christiania, and it's an amazing model, and it's exactly what you're describing of taking former military outposts and converting them into collectively run, community-oriented, and sustainably sort of minded villages. So anyway, just wanted to make reference to that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I know it's 4 minutes. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on. No, look, I just want to mention, Jonathan gets a kitchen pass because of everyone I've ever met in my life. For me personally, he is the one who embodies the culture of Arcologies. I mean, he lives it, he breathes it, he leads it. He sets example. He's taken it across the country and been the Johnny Appleseed.
Yes, he has.
So kitchen pass for you, brother.
All right.
And we'll
I
keep
haven't
it.
even seen his puppet show, but that's.
I haven't seen his puppet show.
Oh yes, that happens too.
All right.
My name's Robert. I teach public administration at CSU East Bay and politics and psychology at College of Alameda, right next to the naval base. He tried that, and that'd be fun. I've always thought of building a community out there, and there's been some discussions of that. I'm the coordinator of the Community Change and Urban Leadership Initiative, which is a project designed to take community change type material and turn it into college degree coursework, and designing pathways to help people create careers towards community change and urban leadership. And we've had a number of workshops, and the idea of possibly rejuvenating urban center of Oakland. We have the violence prevention certificate program. We have pathway to law school because good money. But and the idea is getting lawyers who are trained in the idea of social justice and community change, being trained at the earliest level. And I've also been involved in training about 300 County of Alameda employees with MPA degrees, with a partnership between the county and CSU East Bay, which has been fun. But at any rate, we have the ability to offer space to do conferences and workshops, and to do not-for-credit workshops that are offered through the college that gives them that gravitas for whatever it's worth. And we can do that if anyone's interested. And that's what I bring to the table.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Wow.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like getting more and more thrilled. Like every time I hear somebody speak, I'm like, what? That's so cool! What a like amazing possible here. And thank you, Jamen, for making this happen.
No. Well, this is a collective effort, right? The Sierra Club dinners are, a collective intelligence making this happen. And Michael and all of you, we all made this happen together. So right back at you, and thank all of you.
Awesome. My name is Katrina Zvani. Sometimes I go by Katrina, KK for short. And I've had the privilege of working with a few folks here, Gaz and Johnny and Rains, and maybe some of you in the future. So I'm a community organizer, event planner, and actually my dream is to run a community center. So hearing all of this is very intriguing and exciting, and I want to play. Also have done a lot of sustainability work in screening things like Burning Man or Disney or lots of events, and we want to do more and keep it sustainable, keep it light, but also keep the community aspect alive. Most important effect to me, the social fabric. So something I'm really excited about, and I'm hoping we can pull Jonathan's puppet skills out towards. So I've been working with Starhawk on a regenerative land management program, and so that's going to start here soon. So if you know anyone who wants to be a farmer or a rancher or work in regenerative land, that's starting in May. We're going to have a fundraiser coming up soon, and I'm really hoping that we'll see some farmer puppets up on stage for that, and looking for a venue for the end of March, beginning of April. I would say 250 to 500 people. I want this to raise some good funds for diversity scholarships. So if you have a venue, let me know. And I also run my own nonprofit where I do a lot of resource allocation and supporting communities who have had challenged situations, such as Nepal, who got deeply affected by the earthquake. So I've been working with 3 villages out there, supporting their livelihood programs through agriculture trainings, leadership trainings, and helping them develop a microenterprise. And so I really like to work in a holistic nature and look at all of the different ways we can help the communities thrive and have a good economic foundation. So that's a model that I'm working to replicate in other places, and there's a couple of spots in Africa that we're working with, in particular Uganda and Mali. And the bonus is we're working with Rotary Club and Rotary Foundation, so when we raise enough money, then they'll match that 2.5 times and we'll have a lot more money to work with. So, yeah, those are a couple of things I have in the works. Oh, and one last one is disaster relief. So also working with some folks in sustainable regenerative models for the disaster relief, especially happening in the county. It's called funding. So I like to organize and I want to play with you all, so let's make some things happen.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Who is it? Okay.
Hi, I'm Graves, and I want to call myself a co-housing coach, an eco-village ambassador, in part to my experiences at Arcologies and with the Global Eco-Village Network, and community organizing, helping people build sustainable neighborhoods where you know your neighbors, and living green is not just a matter of the sticks and bricks of green building, but the way you live, the way you relate, the way you move around. Yeah, the social layers built on top of that. And so I'm excited by the physical design of inspiration from places like Arcologies. I'm really interested in the social structures and how do we make this a place where people want to live, can take care of each other, can support each other, and how do we scale that up from what we're doing in community today.
Wow, beautiful.
Hi, my name's Karen, and I wrote my bullet points down here. I think I was triggered to get into all of this way back in college. I went to SUNY at Buffalo, and I had an architectural teacher by the name of Michael Drill, and he talked about general systems theory back then. That was a big thing. And then also got me into Bucky Fuller, and I remember I sent away for some kind of dome thing. I pulled it off.
You too.
I wish I still had it. Anyway, that's what triggered all of that in me. And then I've been to Arcologies 4 times over the course of 30 years, I'd say. I went that first time in the 80s, and I only stayed there once, and I'm planning to go there actually in February, just coincidentally planning to go, and thanks, you sent that email to a few people, and I didn't know about this at all, because I don't come to these regularly, and so it's because of your email that I'm here.
Wow, thank you.
You just sent it a week ago. So. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so Arcologies, and I think, having seen it over 30 years or so, that it's on the upswing. seemed to me. The last time I was there, like a year and a half ago, it seemed, you know, like it goes through there like crumbling concrete and issues, right? And then it just seems like this last time was a little more on the upswing, so that was good. I've lived in 2 cooperative situations in my lifetime, in the Haight-Ashbury and then also on a floating situation on a tall shed for 3 years, which were the 3 best years of my life.
Wow.
So I'm big on it. I like, you know, living with groups of people and all that. At Burning Man, I'm EGAD, which stands for Earth Guardians Activities Director, and I run the environmental stage there. So, you know, Burning Man, we have Black Rock City, is 70,000 people for a little over a week every year, and even though we bring things to the playa, there's still the social capital that's there on the playa that's quite evolved and evolving still.
It's a super critical term, concept, social capital.
Yeah.
Super important in this context.
I also am in Transition Town initiatives here in Berkeley. I have a mushroom farm in my backyard. I call it a fungarium. I raise shiitake mushrooms. And I just want to mention that I like reading climate science fiction. I call it Cli-Fi. And one book that I read not too awfully long ago was Paolo Bacigalupi called The Water Knife. And he mentions about arcology in that book. Except it ends up, all the elite end up in these beautiful new arcology places.
A bunch of sociopaths. Perfect!
But I just want to throw that out about the Cli-Fi, you know, tie-in to this also.
Beautiful. Thank you, Karen.
Hi, I'm Phoebe. I live here in Berkeley, and I've been here 31 years in my neighborhood. I'm an artist and arts educator for the city of Berkeley. But I've always been interested in alternative types of living. I had some really great ideas when I lived in San Francisco over 40 years ago about opening up a whole block, everybody buying the block and open up the inside, and we could create these little, you know, places in the city. A lot of people are sort of doing it now, maybe not. It seems kind of impossible. But there's a lot, like the place in the place is fabulous. And I just know there's so much possibility inside of our cities, and yet I was drawn to this presentation tonight for the idea of, the place outside that is visionary and is being built, and I'm sorry there's not a site already for Califia. I call it Califia. Califia. Anyway, but being in one community for 30 years really allows the kind of resonance. I work with Transition Towns also, and have done lots of these projects on my own neighborhood scale, you know, crisis, earthquake prevention, you know, not prevention, but readiness.
Yeah.
In terms of, and gathering water storage and gray water and gardens and all that stuff that we do to make our communities more resilient. That helps us personally. And I think that, you know, there's just a lot for our programs going on. Intersection repair.
City repair.
City repair.
I forgot to mention, I'm one of the OGs from City Repair.
It's great. I mean, it's so many people are doing such great work. I love the idea that it is coming together in some wonderful way that we can share it all hands.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Good evening. My name is Willard Chin, and thank you for hosting and just facilitating, giving a space to talk and create a community. I work for the United States Environmental Protection Agency, That means right now I'm in a kind of forced sabbatical by certain traumatic events taking place in Washington, D.C. So, but when I mean sabbatical, for me, the chance to kind of recharge my batteries, take time to re-inspire and to reflect. A lot of my colleagues, a lot of people are under hardships right now, so I understand that. But I'm hoping that once we get back to work, I can get back to my day job, which is my U.S. EPA programs at the tribal office. I work with California and Nevada Indian tribes. The United States government created Indian reservations, so we have jurisdiction and responsibility on environmental protection. Yeah, and I work with tribes who are both affluent and extremely poor, and sometimes it's a matter of lacking capital to build infrastructure. They're sovereign entities, but they're fairly dependent on the government, meaning that all infrastructure, drinking water, sanitation, environmental cleanup, it's all dependent on the U.S. EPA or maybe tribal housing and urban development. So there's the equivalent program to do all sorts of things. My day job, my focus is really on building capacity to help tribes develop their own environmental program, help tribes develop their own EPA program. But a lot of the tribes are in very, very rural area. So I personally don't get involved in rural development per se, but we can guide them towards a more sustainable development. Whether it be, again, it's a different paradigm in terms of isolated, poor rural communities. Of course, now with microgrids, and evolving technology, maybe we could find appropriate technology. So I'm here to learn, and if there's an opportunity, during the Obama administration, there was a consolidation or a strategic plan partnership between EPA, Department of Transportation, and HUD to work together to build sustainable community. Of course, that program's been phased out, and of course, nothing's happening under this administration. But things will change, or can change. So I'm willing to really engage my tribal partners in sustainable development, whether it be, someone like, Grid Alternative or what have you. So,
beautiful. Thank you, Will.
Well, I'm really honored to follow you. I'm adopted into the Haida tribe, which are from Alaska and the Raven clan. I carved communities in Haida for 14 years. I grew up on an island in the Mediterranean called Cyprus, and I had an animal sanctuary in the back garden of our house, so I've always been connected to wildlife, migratory birds. Actually, I put myself between hunters who are trying to shoot songbirds and to not do that anymore. So I've always been an animal activist since I was a kid, and I went through the war in 1974 in Cyprus, and so I saw the island burn up and that effect of violence. And then I'm a graduate of the Architectural Association, so I was really familiar with Arcologies and Paulo Soleri's work. At that time at the AA, there was a lot of teaching of this type of work, so I've always been interested in eco-cities. And now I'm a visual artist and an environmental activist. I use my work to speak out for Mother Earth. I'm a defender of Mother Earth. Jamen and I live on Whidbey Island, so we're back on another island. Whidbey is pretty progressive. The kids grow their own food, and it's the first school that, public school that's allowed to cook the food the kids grow and get to eat their own food, which is really awesome. Right now I'm focusing on the orcas. They're starving to death because there's not enough Chinook salmon, that's otherwise known as king salmon. So we're like boycotting king salmon, we're not eating it. I've been leading what I call living murals. So I call the community with other artist friends in Jamen, and we come together. We constructed a 100-foot orca out of our bodies. We dressed in black with black umbrellas, and a friend flew a drone over us, and another friend a vintage airplane, and took aerial photos, and we had a huge sign that said "Restore the Salmon." So we're using these art projects to activate local community And then they're followed up by actions that we can take, like signing petition letters that go to our governors and different local government senators, et cetera, to ask them to take action to help, in this case, the orcas, by taking down dams that are obsolete to free up so the Chinook can return to ancestral spawning grounds. And also, I'm very interested in connecting communities, so First Nations with non-First Nations people, so that we can all become advocates together for Mother Earth. And you guys are all amazing. I love hearing your stories. Thank you for all the work you're doing.
Beautiful, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I'm Adam Soul, and I'm really pleased to be here with all these brains. I wrote the Road to Life plan, which is, and I have the roadtolifeplan.com website. And the Road to Life plan is based on the concept that money is a poison to mankind. And it gets into Arcologies in a way because it describes how we can live without money. And when you start realizing and start thinking about how we can live without money, all of a sudden the doors start opening. For instance, if you take the 40-hour work week and you just eliminate the amount of time that we spend just dealing with money, you're going to end up removing like 25% of the 40-hour work week. And I did some estimates, and I got down to by the time you do business consolidation and standardization and things like this, you can get that work hour week down to 15 hours a week, and then you can develop a volunteer workforce. And then people would move in neighborhoods. We would have to move in together in order to, and this is where the arcology part comes in, because if people start moving in together, they're going to have to start taking advantage of basements and start growing our own food. I mean, and I think this is really critical, and this is what we're going to have to do. My plan is pretty radical, and it may not, I don't expect people to just jump aboard it. So I think it's right, but I don't think people will just jump aboard it. So I've joined Jamen and the Radical Collective Intelligence because I see us building it in virtual reality. And in other words, it's like building a skyscraper. Before you dig the first shovel, put the first shovel in the ground, you build the entire skyscraper in virtual reality. You have a set of plans that details everything. And this is how we build our way out. This is how we find our road to life. We build it in virtual reality. And in virtual reality, our differences can be resolved. And we can use artificial intelligence to help us. And so that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Hello, my name is Gerd. That's G-E-R-D, rhymes with bird. I always do that because Anglos have trouble with that name. I feel kind of weird here because this is all about community and community organizing, blah, blah, blah. And on this continuum from community organizer, I'm at the Robinson Crusoe end. Robinson Crusoe was the guy who lived on a desert island for 28 years and did everything by himself. Now, in the Bay Area, I'm a visitor now. I've lived in the Bay Area for 25 years. I've never lived in Berkeley, but I have a pretty good idea of how the Bay Area works. So I kind of understand your stories. In terms of life history, I've never gravitated towards community things. And I've had more zip codes than anybody I know on 3 continents. And I mean, not necessarily zip codes technically, but in terms of addresses. And I've never really settled down anywhere. I've now been in one place for, I think I've now had the one zip code for the longest time ever, 11 years. And that's about 5 hours from here at 3,500 feet. So we don't worry about sea level, but we're concerned with other kinds of natural issues, and you've seen it on TV. I just drove through that area around Paradise today. Fire is a big deal out in the woods. And I have a question. Does anybody in this circle know about All Power Labs in Berkeley?
Yeah, they're awesome.
Because my main reason for speaking is I want to put in a plug for them and want to point out, if you just check out that website, they have a fabulous website, All Power Labs. Every second Friday of the month they have an open house. You can go there and get a presentation and find out what they're doing and get free pizza and drinks.
Sounds like community to me.
Yeah.
Wait, when is the free pizza?
What?
Every second Friday.
Second Friday of the month from 5 to 7. What fascinates me about All Power Labs, they are working actively on a concept that could have an interesting impact on fires in California. Fires in California, it's a complicated story, but the biggest thing is there are too many trees in the woods. And it's incredibly expensive to remove them, and wood chips are $15 a ton, so you can't haul them very far. What All Power Labs has done, they have latched on to a World War II technology. The military ambitions of the Germans created a huge oil crisis in Europe. And it turns out, as a result, people tinkering with what do we do instead? And I didn't know this. Over 1 million vehicles in Europe ran on wood chips during World War II. Most of the German army ran on wood chips. I happen to have memories of some of those rigs. I actually saw a guy get out of his car, grab a burlap sack of wood, dump it in a big kettle in the back of his car, and drove off. And I hadn't thought about this for eons until about 6-8 years ago, when through a complicated story I got a hold of All Power Labs. And so what I'm working on, I have a 1974 Datsun pickup truck. You can picture these tiny little things. And I'm working on making it run on wood chips to get it in our local parade to just get people interested in the concept. Now, All Power Labs has taken that technology, which was incredibly messy 70, 80 years ago, and combined it with all kinds of tricks from Silicon Valley. And they're working on and supposedly they're going commercial next spring. Their plan is to build 500 portable power plants that travel on a 20-foot trailer that you can take out in the woods, and they can make their own fuel and make electricity that plugs into PG&E, removes excess fuel from the woods and turns it into usable energy. To me, it's a fascinating concept, and I think everybody in Berkeley ought to know about it. So, second Friday of the month, pizza at All Power Labs on Murray Street.
Beautiful. Wow. Now, is there anyone who wants to?
Does Andre want to?
Yeah, I was just asking. If anyone wants to, who hasn't spoken, please raise your hand. Otherwise, so thank you everyone for all the great introductions. You know, one of the first things that comes to mind is I'd love for all of us to kind of stay connected, who chooses to. So if you haven't signed the contact sheet and would like to, please raise your hand, and Melissa will there you go.
I have another question. Is this being live streamed anywhere right now?
Yeah, we're currently live streaming on my YouTube channel, just through this laptop right here.
Is that
there's a number. Pardon me?
Is that in the Eventbrite or whatever the channel was?
No, it's not on there. Basically, this is square wheel, 5,000 years ago technology relative to what Kai Sai has developed.
I just asked because I got folks like Gil Friend who wishes he was here.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we're live streaming it, so I want to know how we can pop people in if they want to.
Yeah, that's one of the things why I'm also asking for whoever wants to volunteer to help, bring the Sierra Club dinners into the 21st century. So we can do that for future dinners. But we're also, Andre is recording this with a much better technology, so we'll have a much. This is just sort of a stopgap kind of thing. But love to work with you, Sai, to bring it to your platform as well. And in fact, one of the ways that we can collaborate that occurs to me, part of me wants just this night to go on forever, right? But we all need to sleep and eat and all that. And so how do we make this, kind of an ongoing forum is a big question. One of the ways that we do that at Radish is we have regular video conferences, some of which anyone can join. So that's kind of creating sort of like a virtual arcology culture where we have this kind of interaction, but through video conferences, right? One of the longest standing one that we have going on is called the Social Club at the End of the World. And Adam and Melissa participate regularly. And we talk about issues pertaining to abrupt climate change and the threat of near-term human extinction, and just look at it from a 50,000-foot level. What do we do about that, right? I would love to see a standing arcology video conference where, people from our group, but who can also invite, as you were saying, Katrina, other people who couldn't be here but would like to be part of the conversation. And so, whether we do it on a once-a-week basis or every couple weeks or once a month, I'd kind of like to take the temperature of the room to see, so I'll ask those 3 questions again. Just raise your hand if you'd like once a week or once every couple of weeks or once a month. Not that you're committing to be at every single one of those, heaven forbid, but, that if you'd like to pop in from time to time, some of us who are just like gung-ho, like Josh, might be there, every time. And, really, bringing it, I'm just speculating, I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. This could be like a general arcology, because, Josh's question is a very serious one. How do we actually make this happen? Right? Enough talk, right? The decades are going by. Life on Earth is being extinguished. Planet Earth is overheating. Arcologies are a major platform. They're sort of like an intersection of, I don't know, not dozens, not hundreds, but thousands of different fields and specific topics and disciplines that all come together, right, to form this amazing mega solution, not just for transforming our footprint from net negative, hopefully, to net positive, right, with these linear cities and all this kind of cool stuff being centers for holistic land management, taking care of their entire bioregion, right? But also they become platforms for transforming humanity, right? You go to Jonathan's Utopia, budding Utopia in Oakland, and it's like you see a whole different form of humanity, right? It's not the unit, I would posit, is not the individual, but the community, right? We're talking about a new organism. Is the individual the ant or the ant colony? Obviously it's the ant colony. A single ant can't make it. A single leafcutter ant, you've got one of several functions, and without the tribe, we go nowhere. So I kind of see humanity as sort of like, we're kind of like this lost tribe that most of us have just boxed ourselves into this little, self-imposed or culturally imposed isolation tank, right? A misery-generating machine of isolation and fear and all kinds of terrible stuff. So we need to transform, but we need to pull ourselves up from our bootstraps because it's awfully limiting and life extinguishing to live in this way, right? So I see the video conferencing and the collective intelligence as sort of a bridge, right? Think of it as like a bunch of prisoners at Alcatraz passing notes, until finally 4 of them tunnel out of there and get out on a life raft in the middle of the night. We need to tunnel out of our prison, right? And the way that we're going to do it is together, doing this, but on an ongoing basis, right?
So what's kind of interesting is our opportunity to bring our science fiction scenarios. You know, arcology is a very well-known term in science fiction. There's quite a number of science fiction novels that just, as a matter of course, use the term arcology. We have amazing, you know, new long-form video, the whole Netflix phenomenon of incredible productions. I mentioned in the little blog post I wrote about this whole subject of Calafia, how I met a guy who was the president of one of the major, I forgot if it was Sony or one of the major cable networks. And he cited Paolo in his talk that he gave at a conscious media conference in Los Angeles. And I talked to him after and I said, well, why don't you do a series on, you know, future city concepts? And why don't you use part of the budget for the series to build some prototypes? You know, I was just kind of poking fun at the incredible budgets they had in Hollywood. But anyway, the main point being, these ideas are very inspirational, and I think people are kind of looking to get out of the television fantasy world and into the real world and employ these science fiction ideas now in our real reality. And so I think getting the word out, I mean, if we could just set our Hollywood machinery to work showing these visions. I mean, my show tonight just was a little fractal of what could be developed, showing future living scenarios and you know, bringing to life some of these amazing visionary designs that modern architects are doing, some of which I was showing tonight. So media matters, the outreach to the broader culture, as well as the collective intelligence instruments such as Radish demonstrates. So, but I was wondering, let's get a little group discussion here. Let's get away from this top-down talking here. And just wondering what people might think about some dots we can connect to bring some life to, not, you know, maybe this initiative in particular, but just this whole notion of moving forward. Josh is an inspiring example of setting something in motion. It's reaching out, creating a community, media outreach. Any thoughts?
Well, I have a question for Josh. Who are you? Do you have any partners that you're working with on this? Like, it sounds like you got inspired at Symbiosis and you were connecting with folks from that festival or ecosystem community.
Sure.
Or anyone else in particular?
So it's called City. It was catalyzed at an event put on by Symbiosis. However, Symbiosis as an organization is really hard to get a hold of. And so I tried numerous times to get their blessing to use the name Symbiosis, and then finally someone was like, you realize that they don't have a trademark on the word symbiosis, and Symbiosis is actually different enough that even if they had a trademark on symbiosis, it's a whole new thing. So I gave up on trying to like make that connection happen. I'm still open to it, but in terms of the branding, that's where that landed. Probably the only organization that's put any real interest in trying to figure out how to work with this from an organizational perspective is Collab Campout, and that's just because I've been working. Collab Campout, much smaller festival group that's putting on a festival outside in Nevada City in April, about 250 people, a small village building experience. Basically, I created a nation builder website, which I mentioned earlier, symbio.city, and there's about 200 or so people that have either subscribed through the website or our Facebook presence to be involved and participate. But in terms of any sort of organizational partners, we haven't really gotten to that stage at this point.
So we don't have any place to go. I mean, we don't have, I mean, you look at all the environmental groups. The commonality between all environmental groups is that they're all independent. They don't work together. And we don't have a place to go to build things together. And trying to get mankind to change is like impossible. So what I see is we build it in virtual reality. And then when shit hits the fan, then instead of saying, well, life's over, well, we say, well, we've got a plan now. We've been working on it. We've put it together. And that's Yamen's Radical Collective Intelligence is doing that. I mean, that's what's happening. We're going to have a website that's for saving the world, where everybody can come together.
It's interesting, when I first started thinking about the development of our project, I've seen the community change in urban leadership. We want to create a center for community change in urban leadership, whose sole purpose was to be a bridging organization. It's a concept I ran into in grad school. We don't need another nonprofit anymore. We don't need another environmental. We don't need another anything. What we need is a bridging organization. And we need all the organizations that are doing sustainable living, connected, and all the organizations that are doing social justice to be connected. And they all need to bridge, and they all need to speak with one voice. Paul Hawken calls the nonprofit world the greatest superpower on planet Earth. It's totally disorganized. The word to ever speak with one voice can immediately own the planet. And so, what I agree with you is that everyone wants to save the world, but nobody wants to unite to do it. And
Transition Berkeley is really good at partnering for our different events with stories.
Yeah, collaborations,
Apologies and
stuff, many different groups.
That's the spirit right there.
And that's how we get more people to come in for our movie nights and our events, is by partnering up.
so what needs to happen is all the major nonprofits at some level need to be connected, and they need to have leadership at the top of each one of them decide they are going to unite, they're going to speak with one voice. And the idea is that the bridging organization would speak for the entire collective, but at any given moment, if there was a particular issue, say racial justice, that cluster would lead for the whole group. Or at any given moment, if you need to do sustainable development, that cluster would lead the whole group. But they could always say, we represent 5,000 nonprofit organizations across the country and other places. And all of their executive directors and board would say, yes, they represent us. And yes, we speak for 10 million people. So let's, but right now what ends up happening is some little nonprofit that says, Sierra Club throws a dinner and 30 people show up. And then we all have a great conversation, we go home and nothing happens.
Well, that really is much of the inspiration from what Paul Hawken did with the Wiser Earth social network, where we had 100,000 nonprofits profiled around the world, right? Trying to bring that community together. That was sustained for about 5 years, and they were just dependent on philanthropic support for that. That's the problem with these kinds of things. What's the business model, right? Well, that's part of what I mentioned earlier, working on the Communitas zone, which taking the energy of the festival culture and the intentional community movement to get started, but incorporating really the whole spectrum of the generative culture groups. And so it's meant to be a private collaboration network for organizations as well as individuals. And we think that once it gets up and running with the main mission to just create more synergies between these groups and facilitate the kind of interconnections that you're talking about, we think it could also lead to, because of the potential power of these few members representing much larger organizations, so possibility of we all want to migrate, obviously, off of Facebook, and so it's possible that this kind of proto-network of representatives of organizations could lead to the adoption of a much broader new platform, PH millions, not a couple of thousand, which is what this is, I'm talking about, a couple thousand members. But, Communitas, so we'll see how it goes, but we're making some progress with it. It's pretty promising. The Gene's working on it with some others.
How do you think you can bridge the issue that, like, Greenpeace, the Sierra Club, and Campaign to Save the Environment all see the membership as a certain size pool. Now, maybe not in the locals, like the locals seem to work together well, but like at the high level, they all see this competing for members to cover their bills, and
funding. Funders also.
Same thing, exactly. Yeah, they're competing for the same pool of money, and in my experience, trying to get these organizations like that to work together, there's this weird, like, no, you're not actually competing against each other to see who can save the environment first. But I don't know how to actually broach that. Have you dealt with that?
I've got something to say on that, and I want to build up. What's your name again? What Karen was saying, or Earth Guardian, Pachamama Alliance and Greenpeace are actually partnering right now, which I think both of them are very large organizations that can be a leader in showing that collaboration can happen for the same goal. And so, and I know, I think they've also partnered with Amazon Watch in the past to focus on Ecuador and Amazon at large. And they're also working with some very cool lawyers who focus on tribal land. So this might be good for you, Willard, of how there's like a collaborative focus on a very specific project of purchasing a large amount of land in the Amazon so it can't be used for commercial purposes, which is a huge fight in and of itself. But I think in having specific projects like that and being a leader in collaboration is huge. Because it is weird, like you would think, it was kind of like we were talking about at dinner of like all the Democrats racing against each other for president, you know, it's kind of almost the same thing with all the nonprofits, like fighting against each other for membership, which, you know, really boils down to funding, which is the main issue. And so it goes back to the young man's question about like how do we access capital for those who have the energy and motivation to do it, the next generation, to carry it on, and then think about the next generations. And so that's really what the conundrum really boils down to. So focusing on collaborations, you know, how we're that.
And you're absolutely right, the nonprofits do act corporate, they act individualistic, and they're competitive. And when we were working with an organization, Urban Strategies Council, and they were one of our major partners. And when we brought the idea of the bridging organization, they said, no, you shouldn't do that because that'll compete for funding. At which point I said, okay, fine, we won't start a new one. Will you make us a sub-project of the Urban Strategies Council? Crickets. But that will kill us. And they need to know that, and I think they do. They don't want to hear it. But two, you need to put together some kind of a shuttle diplomacy program where people go around and just say, look, we're not competing. We're not inventing anything new. We're just trying to bring everyone together to do what they already do. And so you keep going for your funding. We're not after your funding. We're after you. We want, you know, I mean, if Greenpeace and, you know, I don't know, off the top of my head, I can't. If these organizations get together and they speak with one voice, they keep doing their mission. They keep going to their, they keep their membership. But in a sense, we're talking about a kind of confederacy. I'm not talking about federalism. The bridging organization will have no central power.
You're so right.
Yeah, and so there'll be individual nonprofit nation states, and you'll all be part of a confederacy. And the only purpose of the bridging organization is to coordinate speaking with one voice. But we won't even, on any given issue, Greenpeace, you speak.
Where's Darian Hayman in this conversation?
I'm sorry?
No kidding.
You know,
He's probably a dance friend.
it was Melinda Kramer and Darian Hayman and myself, and this was before Paul started Rise of Earth, and we were meeting with these philanthropies, we were having meetings, and they were saying just this, they were saying, we just wish the different groups would get together and create one good proposal instead of multiple half-baked proposals. Why can't you guys get together? You know, this was the word coming down, and we were talking back then about the need for just what you're talking about. And maybe some of the major philanthropies can take the lead and help create some kind of instrument.
You still have those contacts?
What, the contacts?
Yeah, with those philanthropists?
Well, I mean, it was Darian. And so Darian went on to form the Craigslist Foundation.
Right.
And they did the nonprofit boot camp, and they did a lot to
So-
empower
so
the
the-
nonprofit sector, but that same problem remains of the silo syndrome.
And it's not just the silo though, is that everyone wants to go forward with their mission. This is something.
We're saving the world. No, we're saving the world.
Well, and this is something the right is actually very good at. Part of my job, I focus on knowing the literature of all the major different ideological perspectives, and I read the conservative right's literature. So, for example, during the presidential election, the Christian right knew that the election was about one thing and one thing only: the court. And the left was worried about Hillary Clinton being involved in this or that, and they wanted to do everything else. Occupy couldn't focus on one message, so it lost its power. You know, it's sort of like, no, you stay on message. This is campaigning 101. And the left is lousy at staying on message.
But there is progress. I mean, I've got involved with Elders Climate Action and the with Elders Action Network, from the Conscious Elders Network.
Elders Action Network?
Elders Action Network is the new name for Conscious Elders Network.
Okay.
And Elders Climate Action is one of their initiatives, following the Citizens Climate Lobby, their model. So we've started, we're actually presenting on this tomorrow, started linking together and mapping. This is using Kumu, and say, okay, what are all these different organizations and how do they connect? And how can we support each other? How do we not get to the point of not everybody on the same script sending out the same series of fundraising letters and getting better and better and filtering out? I'm not going to donate to anybody who's on that cycle. And that's wonderful. I saw some over here, so I thought some.
And this is similar to Wiser Earth. Remember how they used to map like this?
that's right.
They would map very, like, so on the same page as we were talking about 10 years ago. And,
I'm also, Jamen and I have been in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's something about the Midwest, it's not like the coast. Like, the Office of Sustainability that I'm getting involved with over there, they're working on a butterfly corridor. And that's, I was just been thinking about how can we get this butterfly corridor that has no borders, you know? You just see this thing traveling the whole length of the United States down to the border and up to Canada, so that all these pollinators can have a safe corridor, and they're doing it. Like, there are states like, I think it's Nebraska, I'm not, my American geography really sucks, sorry, but they're like these states that are connecting, that are doing these butterfly corridors that are going to connect, and I was like, this is amazing, because this is kind of what you guys have been talking about, but they're, you know, it's being done in the Midwest for pollinators. So, you know, can we do this for, as humans, you know, with the natural environment, and even do this globally, so we have global commons, and we're connecting those as well.
And what brought us to Ohio was a project where we are lobbying the Catholic Church, first at the level of diocese by diocese within Ohio, but ultimately to lobby Pope Francis to do what you're suggesting, Robert. Because he heads the biggest and most, you know, in many ways most connected, and also most, you know, wired to collaborate, wired to follow leadership, right? 1.2 billion Catholics who are trained every Sunday and reinforced to just, you know, do the same kind of thing. I mean, it sounds kind of wacky, but what inspired this, I and Adam and Melissa and Michael and others had went on a campaign August and September to try to unite the tech sector in coming together to build this platform that we've been doing on a very small scale, build a platform for collective intelligence so that we can all come together and plug in, and using AI, which can listen to everything we're saying, it's not doing it now, but that's the vision. Listen to everything.
The NSA.
Well, NSA is a good, nice proxy. Help us out. I'm looking at the disco ball, kind of like there's, but how? But the idea is so, you know, we tried to rally the tech sector. I'm ex-Microsoft, was corporate strategy manager there, so I know all the heavyweights there. I literally we went to the center of the Microsoft campus. You were dressed as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was dressed as Darth Vader, Princess Leia. And I literally serenaded the whole Microsoft campus with amplification, singing Spanish love songs, and had these giant signs illuminated, about abrupt climate change and, help us, Satya Nadella, you're our only hope. And, got everyone's attention. But at an organizational level, they refused to engage. It didn't grant us a single meeting. And so at the end of, weeks of this sustained effort, which is pretty draining, we said, okay, where are we going wrong? Well, could it be that we're targeting the wrong audience? The tech sector is, deeply addicted to this whole money and hoarding and power and isolation and siloing and all that. What about the religious sector?
Well, there is the notion of the religious left, and they have not been as powerful as the religious right.
Yeah.
I happen to have a distinction of, I was a Republican when I was younger, and I get to blame all my youthful indiscretions on that.
Sure.
But I went to a training in 1983 by a young up-and-coming trainer for the College Republican National Committee by the name of Ralph Reed. And they trained us in Republican tactics that were up-and-coming in the 80s, and that's when I first started talking about this up-and-coming leader named Newt Gingrich. I left the party a few years later. But the idea is the religious right is extraordinarily organized. They have training schools, and they put their people everywhere. But you're right. If you could get, but Steve Bannon is lobbying the Catholic Church, and if you could get the Catholic Church under the leadership of Francis before he dies, and gets replaced by another John Paul, to speak, but then the Catholic Church has its own demons right now. You can't quite.
And see, that's the thing. We've all got our own demons.
Right, I know, I'm aware of that.
Yeah. But anyway, so we're on this radical mission now to get Pope Francis. So here's in a nutshell, the plan is that we get Pope Francis to first reach out to Prince Charles, soon to be King of England and therefore head of the Church of England, the first big Protestant organization to give the one-finger salute to the Catholic Church. And then, invite the Dalai Lama, invite the heads of literally every religion, Muslim, Quaker, you name it, Baha'i, everyone together and form this council. And then do a massive press conference, press release, beginning of a world tour and outreach that basically says, hello world, wake up, right? We're in serious crisis right now. None of your national governments have told you because they're all in bed with the oligarchy and the private sector and all that. But here's the headline that you've all been missing. We're in an existential crisis right now, and either we come together now and sort this out as one united humanity, or bye-bye life on Earth, and it's been fun, or not fun, or whatever.
Human life.
Pardon me?
Human life.
Human life and all complex.
The other species down.
All complex life. There might be some weird bacteria that survive.
I was about that in Middle Earth, so.
But between the nuclear power plants, the destruction of the biosphere, the runaway overheating of planet Earth. That's why I burned out everyone at the Sierra Club with, all these Guy McPherson talks and Mark Jacobson at Stanford and Berkeley profs. We just did this climatic bombardment, trying to wake up the Sierra Club and wake up the world. Wasn't too successful. But imagine, they do this series of press conferences, dust off the Pope Mobile, change its oil, and get it rolling around the world. Basically to rally humanity. But okay, so where do they go to? To a platform for radical collective intelligence. Not necessarily ours. Ours can be a contribution to it. But again, I wasn't too successful getting my old friend Satya Nadella to wake up, CEO of Microsoft. But imagine he gets a call from Pope Francis. Nobody, with very few exceptions, says no to the Pope. Robert, if the Pope called you, would you pick up?
Oh, yeah.
Of course you would.
The Pope just launched an app that's actually built to do what you're describing.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
What's it called?
It's called Push to Pray.
Push to Pray. Yeah.
And every day it's a different thing that the Pope is centering the world's energy to pray about. And it's also it's currently like an MVP, but it's built to actually do exactly what you're saying.
So hey y'all, I'm just gonna do a little piece out because there's a few people I know getting up.
So-
I'm also very tired.
We're wrapping up.
Can we do the who wants to participate in the video chat before everyone walks out? Because you prompted that and never called the question.
Thank you. So let's do that right now. So so you have 3 opportunities to raise your hand. Please raise your hand only once, and then we can break off into private conversations in a moment. But please raise your hand only once, if you prefer that it be every week, every 2 weeks, or once a month. So please raise your hand for every week on this. Okay. Please raise your hand if you prefer. So that was what, 1, 2, 3, 4. Raise your hand again. Sorry, for once every week. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Please raise your hand for once every 2 weeks. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 for that. Once a month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay.
The more realistic approach.
The once a months have it, and now, so if we do this once, but regardless of whether once a month or once every 2 weeks, what day of the week, what time of the day would work?
Doodle that.
Pardon me? Doodle that.
Send out a doodle and ask all the possible people to click what they want.
Okay,
That's a good idea.
Doodle that. Okay. And who would like to collaborate with us on actually putting this together? We need kind of like so Josh, and sir, what's your name?
Rain's like the weather.
Pardon me?
Rain's like the weather.
Rain. Okay, Rain, Josh, I saw Sai, okay, and Jamen, of course.
So you're going to send out an email list?
Yes, we'll send an email list. This is we've got a steering committee of 3 at the moment. Did I miss anyone who wants to, besides Rain, Josh, and Jamen, and Sai, that's 4 people.
And also mention for anybody who wants,
everyone. Thank you, Robert. Great to meet you. Thank you so much.
for anybody who wants to relive Michael's talk,
So if you need
the transcript and audio is now posted as a link on his Facebook post for the event, as well as a word cloud.
Oh, nice. Wow.
So AI is here to help us. If we
Awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you, Rain.
Cheers, Rain. Thanks for
Rain
coming.
AI on us. Thank you. All righty.